The Children's Commissioner says bullying has reached epidemic proportions. Are schools doing enough? That's our talking point. Hello and welcome to Talking Point, the programme on Teachers TV dedicated to lively debate about the issues that matter to teachers. In this edition, we've brought together teachers, mentors and parents to talk about bullying. Last week was National Anti-Bullying Week. Recent reports of extreme cases of violent bullying have led to claims that the problem is running out of control. The Children's Commissioner says some schools are in denial about bullying. But is the problem getting worse? And what can schools do about it? Cheryl Armitage has been investigating.
Pictures of 12-year-old Shani Naylor, who needed 30 stitches to her face after being attacked in class, have pushed school bullying to the top of the national agenda. Her injuries and a number of other high-profile attacks have brought widespread horror and condemnation, and the perception that bullying's on the increase. Indeed, a Teachers TV survey shows 44% of secondary teachers believe it's got worse over the past 5 years.
Already I've been all over the country listening to boys and girls and to young people to hear what concerns them, and of course top of the list is the word bullying.
The Children's Commissioner, in post for 4 months, has claimed every child is affected by what he calls an epidemic of bullying. He believes some schools are in denial about bullying. He sees it as a priority for action.
My strapline is bullying is everybody's business. So that's the first point. The second point is for people, adults particularly, to understand the awfulness of some children's lives, which can lead in extreme cases to severe mental illness, even suicide. So it is a very important issue. And I think the third point is to make sure we all understand how to confront it.
14-year-old Kane Dixon feels his school failed dismally to confront the bullies who made his life so miserable that he became agoraphobic. He hasn't been back to school for 2 years and has tuition at home. It began at the end of Year 7.
Before the summer holiday I was calling names, but after the summer holiday, like when it was near Year 8, I started getting hit for no reason, and just people started proper hating me, and it was just terrible.
The only time I noticed something was the matter was when he would go to leave the house in the morning, and I would be shouting at him, obviously, because I had other kids to get to school, but he was sobbing, like proper really upset. And I used to say, come on, and he'd say, I just can't, Mum.
I couldn't go out the door. I'd start break down crying, I got to a stage as well where I couldn't swallow no food.
2 years on, Kane's able to leave the house and, with the help of a home support charity, enjoys photography and attends boxing classes. However, he still takes medication and feels he'll never be able to return to the school that he believes failed him.
Can you remember what the bullying policy was at the school? I mean, did you have a booklet or anything about it?
No, never. Never a booklet or nothing.
Did you have assemblies on it?
No, nothing.
And your form tutor never said anything?
My form tutor never spoke to me about bullying. Never spoke. None of the teachers there spoke to anyone about bullying. It was just like when I was in Year 7 and 8, it was just a thing, you know what I mean?
No one from Kane's old school wanted to discuss his case, but in a statement, the school said its anti-bullying policy was applied rigorously and incidents were always taken seriously. Every school must, by law, have an anti-bullying policy. But according to the Teachers TV survey, 31% of secondary teachers felt theirs wasn't implemented well enough.
My mum gave me that.
Schools have various options at their disposal for dealing with bullying pupils. Internal discipline like detention may be applied, the pupil may be excluded, and in the case of assault, the police may be called in.
One technique for dealing with bullies is called the no-blame approach. This is based on the idea of restorative justice, in which the bullies are made to confront what they've done, but without blame and without punishment.
As you probably are aware, we have a serious concern with Christopher in your class.
At the Skinners School in Tunbridge Wells, Kent, teachers tackle bullying in a number of ways. The no-blame approach is one. In Chris's case, and with his agreement, a carefully selected group of his friends were brought together with the bullies. They discussed bullying generally and thought about how they could help Chris.
But I found this way a lot better because they didn't get into trouble, and it was just discussing, and it was an intelligent way to do it, and like that, I thought that was the best way.
And how's it been since?
Oh, it's been fantastic. Well, I haven't had any trouble at all, and I'm really glad that nobody got into trouble, and now I do talk to them, and it's all fine.
But the no-blame approach has proved highly controversial, not least with parents who feel it's a bully's charter, allowing them to return to their old ways as soon as the teacher's back's turned. Isn't what you're advocating appeasement?
No, it's absolutely not appeasement. And I think that one criticism that really distresses us is that it's a soft approach. This restorative justice is used worldwide and very supported by criminal justice systems. It is the tough way to help young people to face up to the consequences of their behaviour and to behave in a pro-social way. And I've known some very tough bullies who said it changed me inside.
The government's approach is uncompromising, as Tony Blair set out in Prime Minister's Question Time.
Bullying should be punished. Children who bully must be made to understand the harm that they have been doing. There are new sanctions that are now available, and I'm pleased that we are going to be giving in the school's white paper an unambiguous right to discipline to teachers. It is absolutely necessary, and I pay tribute to the work that my honourable friend has done on this serious issue.
And those sanctions include parents of bullies finding themselves in court facing a £1,000 fine. The White Paper also proposes strengthening teachers' authority, giving them a legal right to discipline pupils.
We'll be completely explicit about the legal right for teachers to discipline pupils within school. That'll send a strong message both to them and to their parents, and I think help to reinforce the action that's already been taken in very many schools to stamp out bullying.
Even with the new powers, the decision about when to step in to halt bullying will still be in the hands of individual schools and individual teachers.
Yasmin Allen, your child was bullied. Can you tell us what the teachers in the school did?
Well, initially, I don't think they actually believed that she was being bullied. There's always an excuse, and it persistently went on for, solidly, I would say, for at least 2 years of her, first in the year 2, then year 3 and 4. And it wasn't until I constantly went in and pointed out certain details and the fact that I had spoken to other mothers that finally they addressed the situation, and she was put in a class at the end in the new term away from all the children that were causing this particular problem.
Did life get better for her?
Yes, it's a lot better for her. She's not fearful of going to school anymore. I mean, I had terrible occasions when she was petrified, and of one particular child who was a boy, and the school resolutely refused to do anything, and that comes down from the head teacher.
And do you think her case is typical?
Yes, I think that's, yes, her case is typical.
Given that you talked to other parents?
Yes, I talked to other parents, and I was told by the other mothers that they had been in to see the head teacher. One parent actually wanted to take it to the Board of Governors. The head teacher said, no, we'll deal with it on our level, and her way of dealing with it was passing it along. She's very fond of passing it to the class teacher. I don't think everything should be the responsibility of the class teacher.
That's one particular case. I mean, if you were asked in general how you think teachers and schools respond to bullying these days, what would you say?
I would say that they're actually scared of dealing with the situations, whereas I think they've escalated to such an extent that maybe they haven't got all the resources in the school to deal with the particular aspects of bullying.
Bernadette Della, you're an assistant head teacher. How would you respond to the same question?
No, I would take umbrage at the fact that you're saying that teachers aren't doing enough. I mean, the video that we had at the beginning of Ainslie Green and Jackie Smith was actually at a showcase event in Westminster last Monday, which I was also at.
That's the Anti-Bullying Alliance.
The Anti-Bullying Alliance, and they also, you saw Jackie Smith going around and looking at one of the stalls on that clip. In fact, the whole room was full of stalls that were brought along by children from schools all over the country, showing what they were doing. In the primary school instance, I mean, I'm from the secondary sector, but in the primary school instance, I was so impressed. There were groups of children showing how they have playtime games and involving people who feel left out, involving those, making sure everyone's got something to do. There was another group doing friendship bracelets. It was called FAB. I can't remember, Friends Are. I can't remember what the B stood for. There were so many things going on, the whole room full of it. And I went to another one by the Anti-Bullying Alliance on Wednesday in Newmarket, and again the same sort of things.
And Bernadette, do you think that teachers do listen to parents like Yasmin?
Yes, I do. I mean, in my experience, there isn't one school that I know of that isn't doing something to address bullying and takes the issue really seriously.
But they weren't listening to me. It wasn't until I actually I had to say, look, this is what's being said. I actually went to the deputy head. Why do I have to explain to my 7-year-old child what the meaning of a slag means because she's been called that in the playground? Why should I have to be put in this position? Why in a Christian school that is supposed to have an ethos, why is this allowed to perpetuate in the playground and then in the class where her whole self-esteem was brought down by this particular group of children?
I'm not going to condone that in any way, shape or form. I think what you're describing is outrageous. I do have a similar experience with my own daughter actually in Year 1, and she was like the boy on the video, being sick before she went to school, crying, being very upset, but she wouldn't tell me what it was. All my instincts were that there was something wrong, phoned the school. They phoned me back by lunchtime and said, we know what it is. She was in a class of 30, 25 of them were girls, which is unusual. The girls had made a club. Her best friend was in charge of the club, and one rule applied: you couldn't wear glasses. And she was the only girl in the class with glasses.
Let's hear another perspective on this. Lawrence Archibald, you're a learning mentor at a pupil referral unit. From your perspective, are schools doing enough to tackle this issue?
I don't necessarily believe so. What I mean by that is it depends on what certain schools class as bullying. I agree with Yasmin where some schools may feel that, some schools aren't doing enough to help parents. What it is, some kids where I work may be bullied. What happens is a school might see a child being bullied. Now, they might not class that as being bullied, because kids will be kids, they'll muck about and fight, and this, that and the other, and a child will go home with a bruise on his face. A parent might ask, what's happened? You know, and sometimes the child will say, well, I'm just mucking about, and I was punched and whatnot. And certain parents will come to the school and say, well, my child's been hit, I want something done about it. Now, the school being the school will say, well, listen, we were there, we saw an incident happen, and your child was actually in an altercation with another child, and this is what happened. But the parent is actually trying to pursue the issue. Now, you know, in that case, parents will therefore, you know, obviously be on the side of their own child. But as a school itself, they might feel that this is not a class of bullying. You know, it's just how certain schools perceive what bullying is, and I think that we have to kind of analyse what we might class as bullying, because where I am, we actually have a lot of kids who are working in a referral unit, and we actually have a lot of kids who are in the referral unit for bullying. And I think it's down to us to kind of analyse and find out why these kids are bullying, you know, for one, because, you know, a lot of these kids are coming from a lot of, how can I say, hard areas, where it's a dog-eat-dog world, and they have to actually come with a hard attitude and, you know, a very aggressive attitude.
Well, we'll come on to that. I just want to pick up something that the tone of what you're saying suggests that some schools don't actually recognise bullying for what it is. Terry Cryson, you're a head teacher of a secondary school in Essex. Would you share Lawrence's perceptions?
I think that's probably true, that there are many schools that don't identify the definition of what is bullying, and many parents who think that any incident involving a child being called a name or an act of violence, a one-on-one violence, is suddenly bullying. Let's be absolutely clear what we're talking about. Bullying is the repetitive act of one person abusing their power on other people. Definitely. It is not an isolated incident, and we need to get this in perspective, because there are things like anti-bullying weeks that all they do is raise the status of bullying, so that every single incident, you can't even have an argument in a school without it suddenly being a bullying issue. So let's get it in perspective. I mean, I do also think that Yasmin's expectation of the head teacher in dealing with everything is unreasonable, because that's why we have classroom teachers and that's why we have tutors in schools and heads of house or heads of year, so that other people who are closer to the understanding of the needs of children can be there. But I'm never ever going to say on any platform that there are schools that are in denial, because there are schools that are in denial about issues of bullying, and they need to be called to task, because there is no school in the country that doesn't have an issue with bullying.
And from your perspective, Terry, do you think some schools, some teachers are fearful of parents?
I think some parents can be bullies themselves, and I think we have to be wary of the fact that often a child who is a bully, they learn most of that at an early stage at home, and their parents can be bullies. Yeah, so yes, they will be fearful of that.
Just want to give an example. I agree with that as well. You know, given an example, we've had a parent literally come in and said, my child's been hit, I want this done, or I'm going to do this to the child myself, I'm going to take this to the court, I'm going to do this and do that. And that's a constant attitude that they keep bringing every time the child gets into an altercation. And, you know, sometimes, you know, the school might be fearful of these sort of repercussions, or the parent coming in. And I do feel that, obviously, the learning process starts from the parent as well.
We saw the Children's Commissioner on that film at the start of the programme saying it's an epidemic. Would you agree with that? Would any of you agree?
I wouldn't say an epidemic.
Would you say it's worse than it was?
I believe it's got worse, though. I do believe that.
Strongly with that. I don't think it has got any worse than it was in 1944 when we had the state school systems expanded.
I think what's happened
more is that, we've raised the game. We've made it much more public about bullying. We've made sure that parents know. We made sure that children know. In our school, we have the ABC, an anti-bullying culture, which means that actions bring consequences. We don't go regularly down the restorative justice, softly approach, the Anti-Bullying Alliance, but we have used that when it's necessary. And we do take action on children who are bullies, because sometimes they need to know this is unacceptable in an organised society, and they are no longer members of our organisation.
I will agree with Terry. I do, like I said, bullying's always been there, but, you know, at the present moment, obviously it's been highlighted more. And it's obviously the most extreme incidents. Bullying goes on every single day, but obviously they've highlighted the incidents, you know, where a child's been cut in the face, or, you know, a child's committed suicide. So these events stand out more. And obviously, they are, you know, from what I can see, they've been putting these sort of incidents in the nnewspaper quite a lot recently.
Yes, so, from a parent's perspective, I mean, how should bullying be tackled?
I believe the bullies, the child that's being bullied should be articulating how it's affecting the child himself, herself. The bullies should be brought in and should be reprimanded, castigated. Yes, they should be, actually, because they are doing something that is affecting another person's emotions. Not only another person's, it has a knock-on effect. It's affecting the parent. Invariably, ultimately, the mother is going to have to carry the can in all cases, whether the child's a bully or whether the child's being bullied.
We don't have corporal punishment anymore. So when the Prime Minister says bullies should be punished, what do you think he means?
Well, they should have privileges withdrawn. And the parents of the bully should be brought in. In fact, the child that's being bullied, the parents, if the child that has been bullied, the parent is going into school and saying, I want action, I need something done, my child's too frightened to come to school, for whatever reason, physical or mental, there should be a forum of discussion, yes, everything should be discussed around the table, and the parent should also be held responsible.
Bernadette, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't take the view that the no-blame approach, we call it the shared group approach, is a softly measure.
Well, we saw someone from the ABA calling it tough in that film.
Yeah. I think it is tough, because it does make people face up to what they've done. And much earlier down the road, I would hope, than your daughter got to. Because right at the beginning of these sorts of incidents, when they start to arise, you find quite often, I think it's as high as 20% of cases, it's actually friends falling out. And the whole thing about the shared group approach is it revolves around feelings and how the person who's suffering is feeling. And then you share those feelings with everybody in that group. And you saw on the video, it was the bullies as well as friends of.
And does it work?
Bystanders. Yes.
Do you think it works, Terry?
Restorative justice works to a great extent. It doesn't work in every single case, but in most cases it can work. But it doesn't mean to say you don't have to have sanctions. If you have a restorative justice and you get people around the table and there's no blame culture, and therefore there's no punishment that goes with that, I don't think that's fair.
And Bernadette,
no blame. Well, at the end of that, they all have to take on board an action that they have agreed to carry out. And so they're not walking away from that and that's it all over. And it doesn't end there. They have to come back, and we have review meetings, and we talk about how that person is feeling now, whether the actions have been carried out. It's a process that goes through many weeks, sometimes months.
But picking up something that Lawrence mentioned quite a while ago, well, you didn't phrase it like this, but is it possible to be tough on the causes of bullying?
Well, like I said before, I think we really need to analyse, you know, what bullying is. And like I said, where I work in a referral unit where we actually have bullies, kids who've been kicked out of mainstream school for bullying, I feel sometimes we need to sit down and talk with these kids and find out why they're actually bullying.
And do you
like
do
I said,
that?
Yeah, well, we do that. And can I just give an example? You know, a child that I spoke to who was bullying someone, and you know, when we sat down and spoke with this child and found out why this child was bullying, he actually kind of broke down and said, well, he was bullied. You know, things for him at home aren't nice at all, and he's venting his frustration out in this way.
Now,
and
is that kind of thing a school's job or is it a parent's job?
It's both. It's both, I believe.
Have to work
yeah,
in conjunction.
It's both. But I really believe you have to kind of understand why some of these kids are doing these sort of things. And you know, in regards to bullying, you know, we've had an incident where a child was literally running around the school, you know, making comments to every child, you know, rude comments to every child. And at one time he was actually grabbed and beaten, basically, because he was constantly running around attacking. And now this child that was beaten, his parent came in and literally said, you know, my child's been attacked, my child's been bullied, this, that and the other, and not understanding the full story. You know, and I really feel that we have to sometimes get these mediators and these sort of, you know, get the parents together and find out why these things are happening, rather than saying this child is doing this and you should be kicked out. And
Terry, does your ABC approach deal with that?
It does. It does deal with that, and the trouble is that it takes a long time and a lot of investment of time and effort. And I just want to come back on a really important issue about how you deal with parents who are in denial about their child who is a bully, and persuading them. That's a major hurdle, and there ought to be, this is the issue from the school, this is what we're saying, and it should be taken as read, and there should be no comeback from the parents. That would be lovely to have that, and that's what Tony Blair is talking about when he says that we want teachers to have that privilege. But also we have to recognise that it's not just the victim that needs support. The victim needs a tremendous amount of support in terms of developing their assertiveness and making sure they're protected from the bullies, but actually the bully also needs support. Now this is very hard to explain to a parent of a child who is being bullied. To explain that we also have to sort out the needs of that particular child, the bully, and provide support and help for them.
I agree with Terry there, definitely.
Well, I would say I'm all for mediation and the whole due process. It's all very well introducing radical procedures and methods, but at the end of the day you've got to have a whole forum, like we're having a discussion where everything is laid on the table. If at the end of that due process you're not getting any success, then yes, Tony Blair can go and fine the parents. However, what do you do in the instances where the parents may be in prison, or the parent has like total denial? It's not my problem, it's society's problem.
So do you think the white paper recommendations, which are picking up on the Steer report, requiring parents to take responsibility for excluded parents, potentially fining parents, don't you think those will work?
No, I don't think that works unless you have had due mediation and process where everyone is allowed. Whenever you have a cabinet or any kind of board meeting, everybody is sitting there, you have a chair and you have to say your bit. There's got to be some kind of process where you compromise, you listen, and then you can put in your ABC measures and say, well, this is going to happen, that's going to happen. And then if that really, really doesn't happen, then you do have to have another way of going about it.
Bernadette.
There's another point I'd like to make, is we're all talking about when bullying instances happen and how they should be dealt with and the various ways of doing it. We also need to be looking at sort of the ethos that we're creating in schools, the preventative measures that are going into place, and making sure that we, well, as far as I'm concerned, that what you need to do is make sure you've got a society and ethos in your school based on respect. That you work with all of the students with regard to issues of empathy and making sure they understand how other people feel, the ability to stand in other people's shoes.
Bernadette, do you think that, you talked about the ethos of schools, do you think schools are taking bullying as seriously as they're taking exam results? I mean, is there not a classroom health set of league tables that could be drawn up rather than exam results?
As in everything else, though, there's balance, isn't there? I would say you're not going to get a school high up in league tables or with good results if you've got unhappy children.
What do you think,
so if you haven't got the pastoral side right,
I think that the Every Child Matters agenda is going to hit schools very hard if they don't do issues in terms of looking after the welfare and the happiness of children. And you know, you can have happy children who don't achieve good results. You have to get that balance right. You can still have very unhappy children who do achieve good results, and you can have very unhappy schools where there's bullying from leadership downwards, where they get good results. So we do need to get that in balance.
But that, of course, raises the question: at what point does schools' responsibility end? I mean, are schools responsible for everything, for the emotional health of children?
We've always been blamed for any ill in society. The issue is we need a society that has a greater level of respect right the way across the board, and schools are just a reflection of their local society.
That's
so let's
a word
put
that the Prime Minister used when he got back into government. That's about the first word he used, I think.
Well, we do need that, and we've just done a whole series of... We didn't do anti-bullying assemblies last week. We did assemblies based on the word of respect, because it is about, if you respect other people, you will not bully them. And it's better to solve it before it becomes a major issue and one of the extreme cases.
And can that be achieved, do you think, Lawrence?
I do. Like I said, you know, I work in a Peru where we have those bullies there, and I just really feel that we need to kind of sit down with these bullies, analyse what is going on in their head and why, and I really believe that we need to sit down with the victims and just kind of understand their feelings as well. These sort of anti-bullying seminars, you know, these people coming in, maybe sometimes getting people who were bullies to maybe act as mentors towards these victims.
And that works.
It does work, yeah, definitely. Because, like I said, you know, when we actually pull some of these bullies aside and speak to them on a one-to-one, some of them actually break down and actually don't know why they're bullying, or when they do explain why they're bullying, you know, it's an issue that needs to be addressed from them, you know, because they're going through a hard time themselves. I'm not condoning bullying at all, by all means. I'm not condoning it, but you know, there really is a deeper process that needs to be implemented that I feel, you know, you need to understand what is really going on with the bullies.
At the beginning of this programme, Bernadette, we heard Al Aisling-Green saying bullying is everybody's business. Would you agree?
Yes, it is everybody's business. I agree with Mr. Crichton said, is that, you know, we reflect society, and what's happening in society is what's happening in schools.
But you need to make it everybody's business in school. Now, in our school, it's not just the job of the teacher, it's the job of the peer mentors, it's the other students, it's the job of every single employee of the school to take issues with and make sure that somebody deals with any report of bullying.
Yasmin, are you reassured by what you've heard?
Not really. Because it's... Well, yes, no, that's unfair. That's unfair to say that. What I do say, what Terry said, though, that it's unrealistic of me to expect, you know, this from my head teacher. At the end of the day, if you have a strong leadership, that is going to... that's going to go right across the board with the teaching staff. If you have a weak leadership, it's diluted. It becomes ineffective. And if we are to not abrogate responsibilities, whether we're a teacher, mediator, support worker, mentor, mother, father, we all have our responsibilities, and I think this is where the total imbalance is, isn't it? Not just in schools but in society. Not every school is the same either, but we do have an imbalance in society today where there's more stigma attached to help, I've got a problem, I'm a mother, I have a problem, I don't know how to deal with this. Or, but there's no stigma attached to sitting there watching, revelling in soap operas and having a parent in
regards
prison.
to parents being fined and this, that and the other, I don't totally agree with that, because, you know, a lot of parents don't actually know or believe that kids are being bullied or are actually bullying. You know, we will call a parent in and they will literally refuse to acknowledge their child as a bully. Refuse.
Do you think it's getting better or worse at the moment?
Definitely worse.
Definitely worse.
There are more parents who are making complaints against the school than are helping solve
them. Thank you all for addressing it, because that's how we have to end this talking point for the moment. My thanks to all our guests for joining the debate. We're back in January with more debate on a talking point that matters to teachers. It might be this one. Till then, goodbye.